I'm Luke Summerhays.
I'm James G. Miles.
And I'm James the Jaster Stewart.
And you're listening to Monster Mash.
And on this week's episode, we are hunting Gaismagorm.
Ah!
Party had just begun. The guests included Wolfman, Dracula, and his son.
Played the mash,
They played the Monster Mash.
the monster mash.
It was a
Jericho coming down. Now you know. Break the wall down.
A gargantuan monster living in the darkest depths since ancient times. Gaismagorm's rock-like forearms boast tenacious strength, which allows it to burrow underground. It has a symbiotic relationship with the Curio, and feeds on their life force for energy. Once it has chosen a place to nest, it collapses the surrounding rock bed to create an opening to the surface. The opening forms a massive crater in which it releases the Curio through.
From the depth, its voice can be heard. The time has come. From the depth it beckons. Come to me. As it feeds on stolen life, its power grows ever stronger. Until it finally reveals itself.
That's bad grammar in that last sentence.
Is that the website making it bad?
In which it releases the Curio
in the
through.
game.
No, I'm looking at the game.
Oh, I don't know then.
You either don't want that in or you don't want that through. You can't have both. Sorry, English teacher.
So here we have
it's a
the...
Curio, right? I never ever noticed that before. I think it's just one of those situations where you read something and it's like it's clearly got a mistake in it, but you don't read the mistake.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So
If
here
I
we
wasn't
have
reading it out loud, I
the...
probably would have noticed.
Oh,
Sorry,
so
Jay's trying to move us on from this boring chat about
Yes, stop talking about grammar. Who the fuck here?
He's the Gaismagorm now.
Oh no! Don't. We obviously have the Gaismagorm here, which is the Monster Hunter tradition of having the big secret final boss.
The true big bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Turn up.
And the leader of the Curios.
That's it.
I was going to say, we didn't really talk about the Curios in Malzeno, so it's good that we've got this second chance to rectify that.
Did we not? I thought we did.
Not
Or we
really.
didn't-
We talked about the bloodening, but we
We
didn't
talked
talk
about the
Well,
bloodening.
I think the bloodening's kind of part of it, right? Because the Curio was kind of powered up to go in for it to go into that bloodening state. But I think
But the main sort of plot
we didn't
thing-
cover it a lot, and we're probably just saving it for this guy.
Yeah.
I do think the Gaismagorm, even though he's not a recurring enemy to the same degree, obviously, as your Malzeno or Negagantian world, I think he's better set up in the overall story and the lore than the secret surprise final bosses of Base World and Iceborne. Because those guys...
Base World, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
That felt like completely separate to the story. I think the Iceborne one made sense because there was the singing the whole way through, and we knew Velkhana wasn't the one singing. So I think it was kind of set up quite
Shabru
well.
didn't sing.
Well, it was like, yeah, it was,
Yeah,
like,
it was
it was vibrating, like basically vibrating.
Yeah.
Rock
It
form,
still
yeah,
felt
making
like sound
making,
beams.
making singing, yeah.
Still felt a little bit out of nowhere for me personally, but I don't.
I
think
mean,
that
I think the best it's ever been done is... Well, actually, Rise is pretty good, because the idea of... You're dealing with the rampage, and then Magnamalo's just following the rampage, then you've got to find out what's causing it. And then you find one, and then you find out that's just looking for its mate, which is the other one. So it kind of actually fits there. And I was going to say 4, of course, is a great one. Because Gore and Shag are the same monster in a new form. So it doesn't feel like you're suddenly ditching the cool villain for something else.
Yes, I mean, much like everything to do with Monster Hunter 4 does it best.
Yeah.
But
Because that's a classic JRPG fuck-up, I would say, is having a cool villain, but then ditching them for the final act to fight some vague nebulous force.
yeah, the Persona games are terrible for that because they've always got a really cool villain with personal stakes, being built up across the whole story, and they ditch that to eventually go, oh, the spooky demon was actually behind everything. Whoa. But at least, Gaismagorm, whilst you don't see him or know its name until he pops up, and I do want to talk about that cutscene in a bit because holy shit, he still has a presence in the story.
The good cycle about it all, when you look at it, it's like a full kind of proper kind of cycle of the Gaismagorm nesting, puts out these curios, which infects the Malzeno, which then infects other monsters, and then obviously there's the big reveal of the Gaismagorm, and then even more monsters get affected, and that's what your end game loop is.
And also you've got that, they talk about this big crater, obviously, that's formed near the citadel.
You can see it from the village.
Yes, that's right. And they're all the research crew are like, well, Malzeno couldn't have caused that, surely.
Well, even you can just look at it and be like, that wasn't caused by Malzeno.
Yeah. And then you actually see the cutscene where Gaismagorm begins creating a massive hole in the ground and literally pulls itself up from the bowels of the earth. Like, the way you just see its hands kind of clinging onto the surface.
No, it's kind of funny. See now that shot of his hand coming out of the abyss. When that was in one of the earliest kind of trailers, or maybe the last trailer before the game released. Everybody saw that. Everybody saw that arm, and people knew about the kind of curio system at the time in some way. Everybody thought that arm was a curious anomaly Arzuros, because the arm is kind of similar to Arzuros' claw. It's just a lot bigger.
Imagine that was the big reveal. A big Arzuros did it all.
Super
Mate,
Apex
can you imagine
Arzuros.
the pop I'd have given off if the final boss was
Just
some
a
kicker
big bear.
Kaiju-sized bear. Or even beyond the Monster Hunter story, thematically he makes so much sense as a final boss because they've done this gothic monsters thing, right? Of Frankenstein, werewolf, Dracula, and it's after Dracula, where do you go? Well, it's obvious. Satan. I beat Malzeno with my brother, and he was asking me so is there another boss? I was like, yeah. He's like, where do they go after Dracula? I was like, well, think about it. And he's like, what, the devil? And I'm like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I suppose that does make sense as a progression of sorts. Yeah. And speaking of the kind of link to the devil, the whole thing about it in that cutscene pulling itself out of the pits of the earth. Do you remember quite an early David Tennant episode of Doctor Who?
Oh yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, where he literally goes to the bowels of the earth.
I think of it as quite a decent episode, but
I like it. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. Literally this massive pit in the earth with the devil just waiting down there. Obviously, Gaismagorm just waiting in the bowels of the earth for the chance to do it. Decides to pop out and say hello world, and you get treated to that really good cutscene of the massive boat contraption with the admiral coming along to push it
Super
back down.
Dragonators.
Yeah, that's it. Because you get the real impression, obviously, you see it poking out this thing cannot be loose on the surface. Holy shit. We need to get this back underground and deal with it pronto. So they do a good job of initially, even though you've not seen him up to that point, really building up his threat level from the word go.
Hell yeah. Yeah, because the boat, when you first find out about it, they sort of skirt around it and say it's just in case, And then you have the scene where you've beaten Malzeno and everyone's like most of the village is celebrating, but then the people in the know are like, maybe it's not time to celebrate just yet.
Mm.
And then the
Like,
battleship does
always
look
got
kind
the
of
impression they were
ridiculous.
kind of using the boat to scout areas anyway around like the big crater.
But the way they talk about it is like it's a super weapon boat.
Yeah.
And then when you see it, that does not look like it's useful for scouting. It's a floating tank.
Yeah, they do pretty much say like, I think like the Bahari's like, the Admiral's got something in his back pocket. I'm not sure why he needs it, but and then eventually they kind of start building it up as the curios are still about. And
well, speaking of the Admiral, they bring it up a couple times that he's from the Citadel and that was his home when it was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So did he know that it was Gaismagorm that did it? Like, did he know it wasn't Malzeno and he'd actually seen Gaismagorm when he was a kid or something?
Maybe he
I
didn't.
think so. I think it's just easier for him to assume because he's from the place that it happened in.
Yeah.
Could have been.
But yeah, he didn't actually see the monster that did it.
Yeah.
Because that would get into cool, like, gothic horror stuff if as a little kid he saw this unspeakable demon.
The Gunlance
driven to
Arlo's
try and
like
defeat
also
it.
like also the other guy on Gunlance Arlo, like he's from the Citadel as well.
Okay.
He looks older.
Driven
than
mad
the
with the knowledge.
What do you think of it from like an actual visual design standpoint?
I like that it seems tied to Nawa and Ibushi.
Yes,
But like,
with
whereas their whole thing was light, right, with all the air sacs and they're floating on the wind, and it's like, what if it was that same basic creature design, but heavy, and it's got big head charms, and it's dragging itself across the floor because it's such a beast and it's covered in rocks.
only works out its front set of arms though. Like the two back ones are kind of a bit emaciated there even.
they're almost like wings, right?
I'm like
the big ones
think
are
about
like wings because you've got the smaller
kind of like vestigial arms.
forearms.
Yeah.
think about it for a human person, like trying to remember to work out legs this day, forearms this day, back. Like, imagine having two sets of arms. Like, do you think Machamps are walking around like, oh, look at Greg, he skips lower arm day?
The champs are never skipping lower arm day. They're perpetually hench as fuck.
Yep. Can you imagine a skinny Machamp? It'd be gross.
No.
Have I told you my Jabba the Hutt thing?
I don't think
I
Jabba
was
has
really-
ever come up in conversation, so probably not.
I was really disappointed in the prequels when we saw more Hutts, and they were fat too. I was hoping when we finally saw more of his species, they would all be these like life
Medium
snake men, and
sizes,
he
yeah.
was he was just actually a fat bastard. That would have been way funnier. They were all these like cool serpent men slithering around and doing stunts, and Jabba's just this big fat bastard.
Doing
So funny.
stunts. I just imagine one of the Hutts like doing a like cool skateboard trick or something like that. There when you said that.
Oh, it's like flipping itself off of beams with its like big snaky tail, you know.
Put on a Cirque du Soleil show.
I mean, this is the prequels I'm talking about, so
There needs to be.
Can
They
you
need
not
to make like
picture
a
that?
fan version of that now. It's too good of an idea.
Oh dear. But I do like VA. Obviously, the most like clear cut tie to the kind of satanic design influence is obviously the big kind of horns on its head. Yeah,
when it opens its mouth, it's kind of a pentagram as well.
I wouldn't say I've noticed that, but I suppose I'm not really looking at its big mouth when it's open. I'm probably running away and try to dodge because it usually results in a big old laser beam coming up after that.
Yeah, fair. Well, it's its second form as well, when it's sort of very well. You know, we talk about the bloodening, right? When it's all black and it's got the big red wings made of flame, and it's like, yeah, it's doubly satanic in that form.
That's very very Balrog, which obviously as well is pretty demonic.
Shall not
what do you think of the fight as a whole?
I maybe this is one of my favourite examples of this kind of final boss fight because you're actually fighting it with your weapons for the most part.
Yes.
I think this monster design, because it hangs its body so low, you can attack it everywhere, not just its like, you know, something like Xeno'jiiva, you're just whacking at its ankles because you can't hit the rest of its body.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this guy, because he sort of drags himself along, you got plenty of options to attack him. And then you also get little ballista segments when he tries to climb. There's we didn't even use our Dragonator in that one.
Yeah, we did. I popped it. I popped it.
Yeah, it got popped
Okay.
like after like the first set of rocks when he kind of.
And then also there's...
And you too, dear listener, can verify if we did use a Dragonator in the video version of the hunt, which will be coming out next week.
Was it when I went for lunch?
It might have... No,
everyone was there
that
when
was
it
way
happened.
too early.
It was just
that
like,
was way too early. Yeah.
I think you were right on top of the Dragonator like button that you press. So it's kind of hard to see. Everyone was kind of up close to the monster when it happened, I think.
And then in the first time you hunt it, the actual Urgent, Fiorain's with you, and she does that cool bit where she jumps up with the wire bug and stabs it in the face to stop him climbing.
Shield bash.
Yeah.
I think, whilst obviously Rise as a whole isn't cinematic as, you know, the likes of maybe the World, obviously with its visuals to back it up, one thing I will say that Rise has definitely got going for it is it's a lot more anime than anything else in the series, and I think that moment is peak anime. You know, like one of the characters having their kind of plus ultra moment and helping you out when it looks most dire, and I'm pretty sure in the Urgent fight after Fiorain does that, is that not when Proof of a Hero kicks in usually?
Yeah, because that's usually like the final topple. So
yeah,
when you got this second set of ballistas and the topple in our hunt, like that's when Proof of the Hero kicks in.
Do you remember in the All-Mother fight, there's the bit where Magnum Arlo turns up?
Yeah.
And it turns out other monsters can turn up instead.
Yes.
It would be cool if you could go back to that hunt with other NPCs and they all get different versions of the big hero moment.
That would be cool. It'd be a lot of work.
They are adding, you can take the NPCs on any quest.
Be a lot of work to obviously.
Yeah, like I don't think
make those animations, but still be
you can never go back and do your like Urgent again. Like that's always like a
No, but you can go back and do the quest, and with update 3 you can take NPCs on any quest.
Oh yeah, you can take them with you on the quest. Yeah.
So it's not impossible. I mean,
I'm just saying it's not going to show that cutscene.
It would
like,
be cool.
I thought you were getting at like show different.
Yeah, that's what I am
doing the
getting
same
at. But
cutscene,
it's not. It's not impossible they could add it. I don't think they will. I'm just saying it would be cool.
That's always like cool about Monster Hunter, like some memorable moments where like you only get one shot at your Urgent, or like in the before Gaismagorm you do that special Lunagaron.
Oh man, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, because that's kind of your lead into the cutscene we were talking about earlier on, where you know Gaismagorm erupts from the earth. That felt. I was expecting to have like a moment from Generations where you fight. Here's you're just fighting a Bullfango. Don't worry, it's just a Bulldrome rather. And then obviously it ends up being Glavenus or something like that, or Mizzet. I can't remember which. I thought that's what we were going to get when the Lunagaron turned up, but instead it's almost. It definitely kind of leans. Obviously, it's not a scary moment, but it's definitely that kind of unsettling horror vibe they're going for. Yeah,
it's horror vibes.
Yeah.
There's no. Also, did you figure out that it's not quite no endemic life because you can still get spirit birds by cutting bushes?
Yes, I did see that. So I
that makes sense. Like the ones in the bushes are they're hidden, so it makes sense.
Hidden,
they
yeah,
would be still there.
So I was still able to get a bit of health and stuff. And then there's just like dead monsters lying around, and just this one crazed Lunagaron. It is a really cool scene.
And I suppose it's something we've not really had that I can think of off the top of my head, where they really show what is the worst case scenario that could happen if we let these monsters just run rampant. Like they always talk about it, saying, "Oh, this monster's going to devastate a village," or or if we let this monster continue its path, it'll blow up most of the new world. But
in older games, they used to do it where if you did an Elder Dragon hunt, there were no small monsters.
Yeah,
so that was a little touch of it. But yeah, this was because the world is so much more alive, and this was so much more dead, and they really lean into it with like the creepy music and the silence and stuff. It was a much harder version of that. Mm. It was the Curio, right? It just sucked the life out of everything.
The only other thing I can think of that kind of drives home the real threats these Elder Dragons actually pose to the ecosystem, bizarrely, is that Legends of the Guild movie, like where they talk about if we don't stop this Lunastra, what's going to happen, or Teostra, whichever, I can't remember which one it was.
I think. But and also you do see it just like wrecking a village, basically.
Yeah. And this, you actually see the impact on the actual world that you've been playing and hunting in the whole game. So, yeah, well done, devs. One thing I do like about the fight, actually, that we never really touched upon, just thinking about it, is it's like the return of the old behemoth mechanic of hiding behind the big rock to avoid the super attack. Obviously, it's nowhere near as devastating as if you fuck up the behemoth fight. But
they had similar in All Mother as well, though.
Did it?
Yeah, there were bits where there would be like a bit you had to hide behind and a bit you had to climb on.
Oh, you're thinking of the blisters that shoots up so you can shoot out of the sky, like.
There was that, but there was one where, similar to that, there's a little rock you hide behind and it did a big slam attack.
I don't remember that. I remember having rocks to climb upon, but I don't think there was a moment where you had to dodge an attack.
There's ones. I think what you're thinking of is there's a beam attack she does, and it's like it sends out rocks, and you're meant to be in front of like a little rock that's like a ramp that helps you jump over the little circular beams.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But
also that rock though, like that's the thing. Like sometimes it's just you get lucky based on who's being targeted at that time.
It also kind of leans into because that's the same point. It does the big kind of obviously wind attack where it tries to suck you in, and then it pulls in all the kind of explosive rocks, which is like meant to be bits of its body. Like I don't understand like what that's coming from. Like what are we knocking off?
That's what it's been sleeping in underground, I guess.
I think it's
like the red rocks are like.
Well, you see,
assume the red crystals it's crystallized versions of the Curios, right?
Okay. It is a metaphor for how Satan's evil doings will be his downfall against the loving power of Christ.
It's just like being back in church.
I always thought I could have made a good priest. If I believed in Jesus.
Oh dear. There's also moments in the fight, like talking about another super boss, that it does remind me of the pair from World. Like, it does a version of that kind of super beam that Shara does in Iceborne. And there's points where it kind of does that move that Xeno'jiiva does, where it kind of slams its legs if it paws into the ground, and kind of pushes down and makes a big explosion. I did notice that as well, but that was just, obviously I don't think it's an official reference. It might just be them kind of pulling some ideas from.
It's just a similar kind of move, yeah.
Yeah,
but it didn't have the ridiculous numbers that the two World bosses have, I feel. And that's just Rise overall, right? It never quite goes as difficult as World did.
No, that's true. Which, to a point,
I'm fine with. I enjoyed the game.
Yeah, like I don't need a super difficult time to enjoy myself.
And I beat every monster in this game solo the first time. I don't know if I could have done that in World.
Yeah, I think Xeno'jiiva is all right, but I think Shara I thought was a bit overtuned. Like talking
I think
about
if I was playing for a long time and doing loads of side stuff and getting great gear, maybe. But the way I was just trying to bash through it for this podcast, hell no.
No, yeah. Anything on the name of the monster, Luke?
Yeah, so obviously the Gaia comes from, like, the earth. So it's like, and then I think Gore, same as with Gore Magala, means, like, evil or terror or whatever. So it's like this horror from within the earth. And then the title, like, Archdemon of the Abyss, like, if you needed any more hints that this was Satan.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally Abaddon. And I was looking stuff up. One thing that's pretty cool, one of the item descriptions, the Wingclaw says, a Wingclaw from the Archdemon of the Abyss, with no hint of the divine heights it once knew.
Ah, so definitely like Lucifer falling from heaven.
Yeah, and then also, because it's tied to, like,
Ibushi
and Nawa, right? Which
yeah,
sort of live in the clouds and are kind of angelic.
Yeah.
This is one that's fallen.
Fallen from
So that's
grace,
pretty cool.
yeah. That is, yeah. Interesting.
I'm surprised they didn't lean into this being, because the whole thing with Rise was trying to stop them mating. They didn't lean into this being one of their children. So it just occurred to me, but yeah, I feel like
Well, I think
that would have made a little bit of
safer
sense.
to assume that like you stopped, you've done your job in Rise and you stopped. That's what happening.
Yeah, but like, because this has been lurking underground. It's like, oh, the last time there was a rampage, they did make a baby, and this is what's been gestating this whole time. Oh, well, headcanon accepted.
I like the idea of it being more a primal evil, like
Yeah.
we don't know its origins.
Definitely. Yeah, like, yeah, the devil, right? Like, going back to that Doctor Who episode, one of the reasons it's so good is it doesn't have any sci-fi explanation. They go to a planet, and in a cave down there is Satan.
Yes. And some aliens with spaghetti hanging out their mouth.
Oh yeah, that's the first Ood episode, isn't it?
It's the first 2 episodes, yep. So next time we're taking a little break from fighting monsters, and we're going to talk about what would be on our Christmas list if we were going to fight the monsters of the future. And by that I mean we're going to talk about our wishes for a potential Monster Hunter 6. So join us for that one. After that we'll be taking a couple of weeks break to enjoy the festive season. So we'll be back in the new year after that, but please make sure you tune in next week and hear us ruminate on the sign of things to come. But until then, Luke, where can they find us?
You can find us on Twitter at Monster Mash Pod, if Twitter's still up when the time this one is. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Just search Monster Mash Podcast and make sure you tell your friends who play Monster Hunter to give it a listen. And please all join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
You're not going to
Thy
make it as
kingdom
a
come,
priest.
thy will be done. Let us talk about bug snacks.
When's the Bug Snacks podcast happening?
If I play it.
Yes. And also, Jazz.
Bug mash. Oh my god! So, do you remember I told you about Sunday beef?
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally either didn't notice or forgot to mention. Do you know what the shop literally next door is called?
No.
Mash Cafe!
Ah, it's a sign. It's a sign.
Did you set up these businesses, Luke?
If I did, I wouldn't still be an English teacher.
Fair enough.
And I know he's not been on the show for a while, but he's forever in our hearts. And Jazz.
Yeah, tweet at
Again.
AndyMan949 and just ask him where the hell he's been, like, and why he's not been on a Monster Hunter cast in a while. Or
Call him out.
why would you even ask him, like, if Twitter is even alive by then? Probably be on
you
Mastodon
might not
or
have to tweet him.
co-host.
Well, Will be on Gammoth.
Yeah, our own social networking platform coming soon. Monster Mash presents the Gammoth.
On that note, thank you for listening.
See ya.
Cheerio.